Okay. So during this hour, we will be discussing what is ABA, the definition of behavior, ABCs of behavior, functions of behavior, some case examples, and then probably the most important part is strategies for preventing problem behaviors, replacement behaviors, strategies for responding to challenging behaviors. And then you all already are on top of it and have a behavior management protocol and incident reporting form. So we'll go over that as well. And then of course, some time for questions. So what is ABA? ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis, and it is the study of human behavior. BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, that's what we practice as ABA. So ABA is scientific and evidence-based behavior therapy, and it is currently the only treatment endorsed by the United States Surgeon General and the American Psychology Association as the most effective treatment for individuals with autism spectrum disorder. However, ABA can be used in endless settings. It is not just for individuals with autism. We use ABA in, mental health, in education, special education, sports, zoo. They train animals using ABA as well. And then just a quick little snip on what Apara Autism Center is. We are an ABA clinic, and we opened our first ABA center in July of 2019 in Sugar Land, Texas. And that is the location that I'm currently the clinic director at. We do now have 7 other locations throughout Houston in Sugar Land, Katy, Memorial, Cypress, Bel Air, Woodlands, and the Pearland. And then we also have an in-home division, as well as we have expanded to Dallas and soon to be in San Antonio. And something that I like to say, Apara Autism Center differs as some other ABA centers. Oh, one second, I just saw someone else enter the room. Something that we differ in is that we really take a family-centered approach to therapy, meaning we are working directly with the individual with autism, but we're also working with the caregivers, whether it be parents, grandparents, nannies, babysitters. We work very much with siblings to include them in the therapy as well. Our goal is to, hold on, I was just gonna put one on mute. There we go. Our goal is to help children with autism live to their fullest potential while giving parents and caregivers the help and information they need to make the right decisions for their child's future. We also collaborate very closely with speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, to really give parents kind of a one-stop shop where you're not having to drive to ABA therapy and then off to OT and then another office for PT and SLP. We're able to be a clinic where SLPs can come in, speech language pathologists can come in, and we really get to collaborate and work together. So there we go. So what is behavior? It is pretty simple, but behavior is anything a person says or does. It can include both overt and covert behaviors. So overt behaviors are observable actions, so things that we can actually see with our own eyes. Whereas covert behaviors are things we're not able to see, like feelings, emotions, thinking, remembering, but those still are behaviors that impact observable behaviors. So for example, covert and overt behaviors do go hand in hand. So a covert behavior for happy might look like jumping up and down, smiling, laughing. That feeling of feeling happy then dictates what those overt behaviors look like. The same thing for sad, it might look like an individual crying, putting their head down, frowning. Mad could be grunting, hands at fists, falling to the floor. And how do we decrease undesirable behaviors? So a lot of times individuals with autism do engage in what we call maladaptive behaviors, which can include, aggression, self-injurious behavior of biting themselves, elopement, which can be very dangerous, of running out of a building, running into a street, yelling, screaming, tantrums. And majority of those behaviors result from just not being able to effectively communicate their wants and needs. So the main thing that we work on in ABA is how to decrease some of those maladaptive behaviors to ensure their safety while also increasing desirable behaviors like communication. So in order to do that, we first have to be able to understand the behavior that we're looking at. So what does it look like? When is it happening? How often is it happening? Where is it happening? Does it happen only with certain people or in certain places? What happens right before and right after a behavior? And then we have to operationally define the behavior. So in order to operationally define a behavior, it needs to be measurable, observable, and clear and concise. So some operational definition examples for hitting, it would be a very broad definition to say, Sally punched another student in the face. However, that kind of leaves a lot of room for assumption. What exactly does a punch mean? So another better example of hitting would be any instance or attempt of Sally using an open hand against another person with enough force to leave a visible mark and or make an audible noise. Non-examples would include high-fiving. So I'd like to try and include non-examples as well. Again, just so there are no questions about what the behavior actually looks like. Another example, screaming. Aisha yelled loudly. Again, we don't really know what does yelled mean, what does loudly mean. So a better example would be any occurrence of Aisha making vocalizations at a volume above normal conversational level for more than 5 seconds at a time. Any questions yet, or does anyone want to try and take a stab at doing an operational definition for a behavior that I give you? Someone else entered the room. Would someone like to try giving me an operational definition for elopement or running away?
I think tap would be great to give us an example for elopement. I feel like we deal with that there sometimes. If someone from tap can maybe give us an example of an operational definition.
The example is that if the child is disturbed for some behavior or some aggression, and he just say without telling anything, just quit from the class and get out from the class. It's happened a lot of time. Behavior schools happen with the students.
Afsha, do you mind speaking up a little bit once more? It's a little bit unclear.
Yeah, so sorry, I missed the beginning part. I'm not able to hear. I don't know if
Hello?
there we go. That's better.
Yeah.
So sorry, I couldn't hear you at first.
Yeah, for the elopement, the student quit from the class and
Afsha, are you covering the mic? It was clear a second ago and now we can't hear you
Oh,
anymore.
I feel so bad.
Oh no.
Or you can type it in if you want. I don't know why it's given so much difficulty.
Let's do this. I can hear you guys now. Yeah, I can hear you, Afra.
okay, so okay, you guys can continue. I can hear you. Yeah.
Does anyone else want to give a definition for elopement a try?
I appreciate you guys trying. I don't know why it's causing some issues. But just for sake of time, I'll kind of keep going on. But yes, a good operational definition for elopement would making sure that you're specifying how far away a student has to move to be considered elopement. So it could be, you know, anytime Zane moves more than 10 feet away from the teacher without permission. And a non-example would be, you know, if he's just playing outside and, you know, running around through the playground, that wouldn't be counted as elopement. That would just be playing on the playground. Okay, so ABCs of behavior. Hopefully you guys have kind of had a understanding of ABCs of behavior and what that stands for. It is pretty simple, but it is antecedent, behavior, and consequence. So the ABCs of behavior are very important. It will help us determine the function of the behavior, which we'll get to in a minute. But antecedent is what happens right before the behavior. Behavior is the action that is observed. And consequence is what happens as a result of the behavior. So some examples, antecedent, the teacher tells Norhan to play with her friends. The behavior is that Norhan listens and plays appropriately with her friends. The consequence is that the teacher comes over to Norhan and praises her with tickles and a sticker for playing nicely. So given that example, do you think that the behavior will happen again and that Norhan will continue to listen and play appropriately with her friends? You can give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if easier. Perfect, I see a thumbs up. Very good, yes. Norhan has been reinforced by her teacher, so more than likely in the future, she will continue to engage in that behavior. Another example, mom tells Janelle to clean up her room. Janelle throws her shoes at mom, and mom says, okay, never mind, I will clean it up later. So given that example, do you think in the future when Janelle doesn't want to clean her room that she's going to throw her shoes again? I see some thumbs down, but it's actually thumbs up, even though mom reinforced her behavior by saying, okay, fine, you don't want to clean up, I'll clean up for you. And so in the future, Janelle more than likely, when she doesn't want to clean her room, is going to remember, oh, that one time I threw my shoes at mom, she let me get out of cleaning my room. Let me try that again and see how it goes. One more example, James sees a candy he wants at the grocery store. James screams and cries for the candy, and the dad says, stop screaming and I will buy the candy for you. So in the future, do you think when James wants candy, he's going to scream? No, that's a tricky one, but thumbs up. More than likely, he probably will still scream because even though dad said stop screaming and I'll buy candy for you, he knows like, okay, I have to scream in order to stop screaming so dad can buy me candy. So I give that example a lot of, you know, many times when we're at Target or, you know, Walmart, HEB, you know, kids see toys or candy that they want. And a lot of times it ends in a temper tantrum. And, you know, I feel greatly for parents because that can be really stressful and embarrassing to kind of have your child crying in the middle of an aisle. And a lot of times the easiest thing to do is like, okay, stop crying, don't cause a scene. I'm just going to buy this toy for you. But in doing that, you're actually reinforcing that behavior of throwing a tantrum. So more than likely in the future, it's going to continue to happen. I know you guys have your own ABC chart for problem behavior. So this is perfect. It looks like Abraham's peer was crying loudly. Abraham hit his peer, and then he was removed from the classroom. So in this case, if Abraham's main goal was to get out of doing his work or being out of the classroom, he was reinforced for hitting his peer. So you'll start to recognize the more you take ABC data, you'll kind of see trends and patterns of maybe a certain individual cries every time their friend takes a toy from them. And so you're able to kind of manipulate the environment to make sure that a friend isn't taking their toy, because you know that might be a trigger for crying. So it takes some practice and some getting used to, but it's definitely a really great strategy for learning about problem behaviors, and then trying to prevent problem behaviors from happening. Does anyone have any questions on ABC before we move on? No? Okay. So then we go into the functions of behavior. So for every single behavior that, oh, I think I see someone coming up with a question.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so in the example of like the candy at the store when the child starts to cry, what would be the best course of action if, well, you don't want to give them the candy so it doesn't become reinforced. So how do you deal with it?
That is a great question. In the moment, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to deal with it. The best thing you can do is if you know that happens, it's called antecedent manipulation, but kind of set up the environment before you even walk into the store of saying, okay, if you walk nicely with me, the whole time we're in the store, then at the end, I can buy you a piece of candy. But if you are not walking nicely with me, or if you're crying, we're not able to go buy that candy. And as difficult as it may be, if they start to cry or engage in a behavior that you've asked them not to do, don't give them that candy. Or it might be that you buy the candy, but you don't give it to them right away. You wait until they've kind of calmed down. Maybe you go back to the car, able to regroup, and they're able to appropriately say, hey, I really want that candy, or I really want that toy. May I please have it now? And then reinforce that behavior as opposed to the screaming and the crying. Does that help answer your question a little bit?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was a great question. Yes, so the 4 functions of behavior, all of our behaviors has a function or a purpose. So the 4 purposes are escape, attention, tangible, and sensory. And a lot of times you might hear as sensory as automatic as well. So I'll go through each one in a little bit more detail. Attention maintained behaviors are behaviors that are maintained or reinforced by someone's attention or even lack of attention to the behavior. These behaviors occur in order to increase or decrease the amount of attention gained from others. So I used Michael as an example for each of these functions. So an example, Michael might be playing alone, maybe he's bored. The antecedent would be that Michael then throws a chair across the room. The behavior is that the teacher comes over to Michael, makes eye contact, and says, no throwing chairs. So even though it's kind of negative attention, it's still attention, and it might even be the attention that Michael is kind of seeking, that reprimand. So the consequence is that the teacher then goes back to her desk, and Michael decides to throw the chair again. That behavior is then reinforced as the teacher gets up again and yells, no more throwing, Michael. So in this case, Michael is getting attention by throwing a chair. Another function is escape. So escape maintained behaviors are behaviors that are maintained or reinforced by escaping a demand. And it doesn't have to be just a demand. It could be escaping a certain room or a certain person, but kind of getting out of something that they don't want to be around. And these behaviors occur in order to decrease the work, task, or aversive stimuli that is presented to them. So in Michael's case, Michael might be playing with his preferred toys, and then Michael's teacher asks him to come to the table to do some work. Michael doesn't want to do work, so he screams and throws his toys everywhere. The consequence would be that the teacher says, okay, you're not ready to work, you can keep playing with your toys. That behavior is then reinforced as Michael continues to play with his toys and gets out of doing work. So again, in the future, when the teacher says, okay, it's time to work, more than likely, Michael's going to scream and throw his toys because he learned that that lets him escape doing work.
So Amberly, can I ask a question here?
Of course, please.
So sometimes this does happen at some of our centers. Like we'll have like our kiddos, they'll be working, but then they don't want to work and then they'll act out. And then a lot of the times we're like, okay, let's go ahead and play. Let's just do that. So then how do we avoid kind of reinforcing that negative behavior when we are working with our kiddos?
Yes, so it's definitely okay to, take a break, ask for help. The thing is kind of replacing that screaming or that throwing of toys with what we call a functional communication response. So even if it has to be prompted, and I get to that in another slide, but you could say something like, you know, Michael, I see that you're not ready to work. You can ask for a break, and just have him say break. Or, you know, if they're using pictures or some way to communicate with you in a functional way that they want a break or they want more time playing with their toys. And then it's definitely okay to reinforce that behavior. You just don't want to reinforce the actual throwing of the toys.
Got it. So we want to give them like a communication outlet to kind of convey what they want.
Exactly. That way they can learn, oh, okay, I can say help or break, and I get help or a break, as opposed to knowing, oh, I just need to throw toys and then I get my break. So even if it's in that moment, just saying, hey, ask for break, and you reinforce it by giving them that break.
Thank you.
Of course, that was a great question. The third function is tangibly maintained behaviors. So these are behaviors that are maintained or reinforced by access or denied access to a preferred object, item, person. These behaviors occur when someone wants something, but they can't have it in the exact moment. Michael's example, Michael is at school and wants candy. Michael asks for candy and the teacher says, no, not right now, we're about to have lunch. Michael stomps his feet and hits the desk, and the teacher says, okay, don't get mad, you can have one lollipop. Michael eats the lollipop and stops the slamming of the desk. So again, in this case, what do you do if Michael wants candy, but we're about to have lunch and you don't want to reinforce him hitting his feet, stomping? I would use simple, you know, first then language of first you need to eat lunch, then you can have your lollipop. And we'll talk through some de-escalation techniques as well. But yeah, the worst thing you can do is in that moment, give him the lollipop without at least having some sort of functional response, or, you know, you need to at least take one bite of your sandwich and you can have a lick of the lollipop. Kind of figuring out a way to still have Michael eat his lunch and not just eat the candy. And then the last function is automatically maintained behaviors. So these are behaviors that are maintained by internal pleasure or satisfaction. So we all engage in automatically reinforcing behaviors and probably don't even realize it, but it could be things like, you know, cracking your knuckles because it feels good, or right now you can't see my legs, but I'm kind of swaying my legs back and forth, and that's just something that feels good to me. A lot of times twirling hair, chewing gum can even be an automatically maintained behavior. For individuals with autism, a lot of times they are referred to as stereotypy or STEMs, and they might be a little bit more kind of obvious in nature. A lot of times it might look like hand flapping or turning in circles, repeating the same phrase over and over again. Those are all automatically maintained behaviors. So again, in Michael's example, Michael was trying to work on his work, but was getting distracted. Michael's teacher yelled at him for not doing work, and Michael begins to feel anxious. Michael begins to bite his nails all the way down, and Michael no longer has anxious thoughts and is focused on his nail biting. And so Michael probably will continue to nail bite anytime he's feeling anxious, scared, happy, etc. Automatically maintained behaviors are not a bad thing. It's not, at least for our ABA center, when an individual has stereotypy or STEMs, we don't work on trying to eliminate them. It's a way of almost self-soothing. So the only time we kind of intervene on trying to replace those behaviors is if it is harmful or kind of affecting their ability to learn. So why does this all matter? Now that we have taken ABC data and determined the function of the behavior, we can then write up a lot of times what is called a behavior intervention plan, or BIP. And that includes antecedent strategies, replacement behaviors, and consequence strategies. So before we do that, just kind of a little test. If every center wants to take a turn, whatever works best. Isa's teacher sits down next to Isa. Isa pulls his teacher's hair. Ouch, she cries. Stop that, Isa. Isa smiles and giggles. In a few minutes, Isa pulls his teacher's hair again. So what is the antecedent in that scenario? I think I heard someone say teacher sits down, which is correct. And then what is the behavior? I'm not sure if I heard anyone, but oh yes, champions. I don't know if I'm just struggling hearing everyone, but behavior would be that he pulls his teacher's hair. And then what is the consequence?
Crying out.
The crying out, saying, ouch, stop that. And so more than likely, since Isa engages in the behavior again, what do you think the function was of that behavior?
Smiles and giggles.
The smiling and the giggling, that's part of what's being reinforced. But what function do you think that serves? Do you think it's automatically maintain, escape maintain, attention maintain, or tangibly maintained? Don't be scared. What do you think?
I don't think you can hear us. I can hear you right now, Sabrine, Ellie, or Sarah. I think I heard Sarah's voice.
Okay, we said attention. Is that
100%. Good job. Yes, he is getting that kind of attention from his teacher of, saying stop that or ouch. So very good job. That is attention. The next example, Fahad's mother gives him his lunch. I don't want pasta. I want cookies, he says loudly. No, Fahad, it's lunchtime. You can have cookies later. Fahad screams and cries loudly for 10 minutes until his mother gives in and gives him the cookies. So in this case, what do you think the antecedent is? He gets his lunch, yep. And the behavior? Behaviors that he screams, I don't want pasta, I want cookies. And what's the consequence?
He gets the cookie.
Perfect. Yep. Mom finally gives in and gives him the cookies. So in this case, is that attention maintained, tangibly maintained, automatically maintained, or escaping a demand?
Tangibly.
Perfect. Tangibly maintained because he got the cookies that he wanted. Very good. One other, Raina's teacher asked her to open her book to page 7. Raina picks up her book and throws it across the room. That's it, Raina. You are going to the principal's office. Raina smiles as she follows her teacher out of the room. So in that behavior, what is the antecedent? The teacher asked her to open her book. Perfect. And what is the behavior? Perfect. Yep. She throws it across the room. And then what is the consequence? She gets to leave the room to go to the principal's office. So in that case, what do you guys think the function is?
Escape.
Escape. Perfect. Yep. She was able to escape doing her work by leaving the room to go to the principal's office.
Quick question. I'm guessing you wouldn't want to like abstract away, like in that particular example, you could possibly make the argument that the antecedent there was that she was asked to do work rather than, overlook page 8, right? But that wouldn't be what you wanted. You would want to identify the actual antecedent itself, right? Because the result of that's going to come up in the function of the behavior, right?
Right. Yes, I missed the beginning part of what you said, but yes, the antecedent was that a demand was placed, to open her book, page 8.
Right. Yeah. No, I was asking if it would be appropriate to abstract that up to not just ask her to open her book, but to get ready to study or to do some other sort of work. Is that abstraction appropriate or no?
Yes, definitely. In that case too, it might just be a simple first then, okay, first we're going to do some work and then we can have a break time. A visual schedule might be very helpful. Sometimes seeing a visual as opposed to having a demand kind of placed on you, a visual that might just say it's work time. That might be helpful as well. Of course. A very good question. And last one, Selma is in class. She is tapping repeatedly on her desk. Oops, sorry, did not mean to click that. The noise is disturbing other students. So in that case, what is the antecedent? This one can be a little tricky. So, yep, just being in class and the behavior. Tapping repeatedly on her desk, and then the consequence.
Disturbing other students.
Disturbing other students, and what is the function of this behavior?
Yeah.
Yep, it automatically maintains. It could be argued, we didn't go into more detail, but if the other students were giving a lot of attention to Selma by maybe saying like, you're annoying, you're distracting me, stop tapping, could possibly be attention maintained as well of getting that attention. But in this case, it sounds like it's just automatically maintained. Awesome job. So now for, in my opinion, again, kind of the more important part is how can we prevent behaviors from happening before they even start? So if you have a student that likes to bite others, how can we prevent that from happening? Because once you bite someone, that's a serious behavior and it's difficult to then give a consequence. We want to prevent that behavior from happening in the first place. So some antecedent strategies. The most important antecedent strategy that anyone can use, and it's very, very easy, but it's just developing a positive relationship with your student right away. So just like I don't like if some person came into my house right now and started telling me to clean up my apartment, I would be like, no, who are you? No way. So it's really important to develop that relationship first. You want that student to be your best friend. You want to treat them with kindness, with respect, with dignity. And you want to find out what they like and what they don't like. If you know that your student really loves Paw Patrol stickers, that's something you can kind of use to your advantage of reinforcing, their positive behavior with Paw Patrol stickers. Same thing if you start to learn they really don't like loud noises and the bell's about to ring or a loud noise is about to come up. You can use antecedent strategies of, okay, maybe we put headphones right before the bell goes off. So it's really important to develop that relationship. In ABA, we call it pairing or rapport building, but it's very important. So I always recommend for you guys, I think you see your students every Sunday, maybe the first 5 minutes of every Sunday is just pairing with your student, getting to know them, seeing what kind of day they're having, giving tickles, hugs, whatever they like, just starting to build that relationship. And then if you know the function of their behaviors, then you can kind of focus on the function of their behavior to develop your antecedent strategies. So for example, if your student has a behavior that is maintained by attention, you might want to start teaching your student how to ask for attention appropriately. Let's say, they yell out for your attention. You might want to remind them every 5 to 10 minutes, hey, remember, if you need me or if you want to talk to me, you can raise your hand, and just kind of start teaching them the appropriate way to ask for attention as opposed to the behavior that they're engaging in to get that attention. You also might want to give attention non-contingently, which means you're giving attention not dependent on a good behavior. It's just, maybe you have a timer and every 30 seconds you're walking up to that student and saying, great job, Johnny, you're on work, you're doing your task. And every 5 seconds you're giving some attention so they don't become deprived of that attention that they're looking for. For escape, this probably is the most common function for behaviors, especially in a work or school setting, is students just want to get out of doing their work. A great option is to provide choices when you're placing a demand. So you might say, would you rather do your reading or your math first? And you're allowing that student to have some control over their work as well. Another great option would be using a visual schedule. For a lot of students, this can look different. It can be as detailed as, mapping out every task they have to do, and they, put a check mark each time they check off a task. And when they check off all their tasks, maybe they get reinforced for getting through their day. But that visual schedule, especially for individuals with autism, a lot of times they're more visual learners. So seeing visually what they need to do as opposed to just constantly being told, okay, now it's math time, now we're going to do handwriting, then we're going to go outside. That's a little bit more difficult for them to comprehend and understand what's coming next. And then the most important one is teaching a functional way for the student to ask for help or a break when needed. So for some students, if it's difficult for them to verbally say, I need a break, maybe you have a break card on the table and they just hold up the break card whenever they need a break. And then you reinforce it when they're using that appropriately, as opposed to them just running out of the room when they want a break. For denied access or tangibles, maybe they really love their parents' iPad, and when they come in for Sunday school, they don't get their iPad, and so they're like, I got denied access, I'm mad. So some great things are kind of to establish some rules or expectations of, again, maybe that's a little bit more on the parents in that example of parents being able to communicate with their child. Okay, we're going to be at school for about an hour. You're not allowed access to my phone at that time, but if you have a good report from your teachers on the way home in the car, you can have access to your iPad. So kind of just setting up the expectations of when the tangible will be available again, as well as slowly teach tolerating being told no or wait for preferred items. An easy way to do this is, let's say a tangible is candy, and you're reinforcing good behavior of giving a candy every time they answer a question. And anytime they're told, no, you're not allowed candy right now, or maybe they didn't answer that question, and so all of a sudden they don't get that candy, is kind of teaching them in very slow durations to accept being told no or wait. So you might say, okay, they might ask for candy, and you say, I need you to wait 5 seconds before you get the candy. And you set a timer at 5 seconds. The second the timer goes off, you can reinforce with the candy. And slowly you can build up those 5 seconds to 30 minutes, an hour, a whole day. But you have to start slow. It would be unrealistic to expect, to say, no, can't have candy, you need to wait till next week. More than likely, that's too long of a time for them to wait for that reinforcer. And then automatically maintain behaviors. You can just allow free access to a lot of leisure activities that might be self-soothing. They make a ton of fidget spinners now and fidget toys. A lot of times just having free access to those kind of items will kind of prevent some more of those harmful automatically maintained behaviors. There's also something called a multiple schedule, which is just teaching appropriate and inappropriate places to engage in that stereotypy or that STEM. And then just some general overall strategies for preventing problem behavior. We kind of already talked about this one, but know your students, talk to their parents or their past teachers, figure out what your students' triggers are, what their behavior are, and then of course what their reinforcer is. Foreshadow, always let your student know what is coming up next. Go over the schedule. Again, could be using that visual schedule so that they know when a transition is coming up. A timer is a great tool to use to signal break time versus work time. Give breaks. If you know that the student you're working with is only tolerating working for 2-3 minutes, don't try and push it. Just say, okay, we're going to work for 2 minutes and then we're going to get a break. Maybe the break is only 2 minutes and then we're going to come back to the table and then start work again. But it's definitely okay to allow those breaks. First then language is really important. Just using very simple first then statements. First we're going to do our prayer, then we can go outside. But establishing kind of what has to happen first before a preferred activity is coming. Redirect. If the student seems to be having a rough time, and showing precursor behaviors, redirect their attention to something else. For example, again, maybe they're doing their work and they're getting frustrated and they're starting to kind of grunt, or you can just tell that they're agitated. Maybe go up to them and just redirect their attention of, hey, what did you eat for breakfast? What did you do this past week? What are you going to do when you get home today? And almost distract them from engaging in that behavior. A walk is a great idea. Sometimes just a change of scenery or environment makes a big difference. And then most importantly is just staying calm. Your student is responding to your body language, your voice tone, your volume, your speech, your energy. So just if you seem agitated and anxious, more than likely your student will also become agitated and anxious. So teaching replacement behaviors. We kind of talked about this already as well, but many times when we see our students engaging in problem behaviors or maladaptive behaviors, it's just because they're not able to communicate what it is that they want or need. And so one of our jobs is to teach them a better way to communicate it. A replacement behavior is just another action the student can do to gain that reinforcement instead of engaging in the problem behavior. It allows the student to get the same type of reinforcement they receive for problem behaviors, but in a more appropriate manner. Some examples: hitting for attention. You might instead teach a replacement behavior of raising their hand for their teacher's attention. Crying for candy, learning how to wait for an item. Crying to get out of doing work, learn how to ask for help or a break. Head hitting when feeling anxious, maybe instead tight hugs to the student for sensory input would help be a replacement behavior instead. And then always reinforce appropriate replacement behaviors. So if you see that your student is engaging in an appropriate behavior of raising their hand when usually they hit instead, give them a lot of attention of, hey, I love that you raised your hand this time. You know, I'm going to give you an extra sticker because you raised your hand. So I know we're running out of time, so I'll just do one of these for practice. But Emma's yelling behavior is being reinforced by being removed from the classroom and not having to complete her assignment. What could a replacement behavior be for yelling? Does anyone have an idea?
Don't repeat it. Asking for a break. Asking for a break.
Perfect. Yep. Asking for a break would be a great one. And then I'll answer this one for you all, but Cheyenne picks and peels the paint off of walls when he is bored, as this behavior feels good to him. What could a replacement behavior be for wall picking? This is actual example that happens at our clinic. And so what we've done is instead, we put dried up glue on kind of a dry wall, and he's allowed to peel that as opposed to peeling the actual paint off of walls. So just some strategies for responding to challenging behaviors. When we use the term consequences, are we referring to responding to the behavior using a punisher such as timeout, spanking, removal of the phone, etc.? Can you give me thumbs up or thumbs down for what you think? Perfect. Yes, thumbs down. I know consequence, when you hear that word, a lot of times it comes with a negative association. But when we are referring to consequences, we're just referring to what happens immediately after the behavior. So some ways, consequence strategies is positive reinforcement. That's one of the most important things you can do. If your student is engaging in a behavior that you like completing their work or asking appropriately for a break, reinforce as much as possible every time you see them engaging in that behavior, as you will then start to see their behavior increase over time. Planned ignoring is a consequence-based strategy. It's important to note that you are not ignoring the person, you're ignoring the behavior. This will not work, of course, for dangerous behaviors that you have to give attention for. but you will deliver reinforcement as soon as the individual is engaging in the desirable behavior. For example, let's say your student is ripping up paper and, yes, it's not a great behavior, but they're not harming themselves or anyone else by engaging in this behavior. And you can tell they're doing it for attention. A lot of times if you kind of just turn your back away or even give attention to another student, you might walk up to another student and say, oh, I love how you're doing your work. You're doing a great job. And once that other individual has stopped engaging in the paper tearing, you would reinforce them and say, oh, great job. I see you're doing your work now. And just ignore the tearing of the paper. There's something called differential reinforcement. Token economy. I don't know if you guys use the token economy, but a lot of times it might just look like a, board that has 5 squares, and maybe they get a sticker each time they answer a question. Once they get 5 stickers, they get to exchange that board for something from the treasure chest or for the candy. But that token economy is really helpful because it shows your student when they will be access to a preferred item or when it's break time. And then just prompting through problem behaviors. If you start to see your student getting frustrated when doing work, before they escalate to the point of throwing a chair, maybe just walk up to them and say, offer a solution. I see you're getting frustrated with your work. You can ask for help by raising your hand. And that way you're not even allowing them to engage in that behavior. You're kind of reinforcing just that precursor behavior. Again, just some general strategies for challenging behaviors. If your client is yelling, make sure that you're not yelling back at them. That's not respecting your students. So just try and stay quiet and calm and talk during lows. Make short, simple requests. Defiance, try not to get into a power struggle of, giving task after task after task. Set limit for choices. Insults, don't take them personally. Try not to show a reaction. Hitting or kicking, it's important, but just take a step back. Block if you need to, but a lot of times if you just move away from that student, they're not going to follow you to try and keep hitting or kicking. Spitting, you might just put your hand up to block. Throwing objects, use what you can to block what's being thrown. Biting, do not pull out. Push into the bite and you can pinch the nose shut, and a lot of times the student will open up their mouth. But it's very important if you get a bite to not just yank your hand or your body part out of their mouth, because that's actually going to break their skin as opposed to pushing into the bite. I know we're running out of time, so I'm not going to go into detail about our crisis plan, but just so you can kind of see what ours look like, we always make sure with any student we list out possible triggers, things that usually will kind of set off a problem behavior. And then what comes next are those precursor behaviors. That's not an escalated behavior, but it might be the signs that escalated behavior might happen. Could be whining, grunting. And then preferred de-escalation techniques. And then we break our crisis plan into green, yellow, red. And so before the behavior occurs, those are your antecedent modifications, how you can minimize behavior as it starts to escalate, what to do if the behavior does happen, and then after the behavior has happened, how to kind of get your student back into yellow and then into green. For you all, I know you have your own behavior management protocol. Most important thing, if a behavior is escalated to the point of that student's safety or other students' safety or even your own safety, it's important to try and clear the room. I believe you guys have a lead teacher, so the lead teacher and one intern should stay, and they kind of will be dealing with the behavior. A lot of times it's helpful to kind of call a leader. So you might say, I'll take charge of this one. And that way there's not 2 of you that are kind of trying to deal with the behavior at the same time. Very important to remove any hard objects, especially if you know that student likes to throw things. Maybe if you have scissors sitting out, put away any scissors or pencils so they can't use that to harm anyone. Try and de-escalate. You can try and just stay very calm, never restrain the individual. A lot of times, trying to just have a conversation of, it's okay. Maybe they're upset because mom and dad are not here. So it's okay, mom and dad will come soon. But if you can tell that your talking is kind of escalating the behavior even more, then just step away, maybe allow them to have a minute or two to regroup themselves, before trying to talk to them again. You'll have to contact the caregiver, complete the incident report form, and then your team would review kind of how you could have handled that situation better, maybe. And then you guys do have an incident report as well. And I think it's awesome that you guys do this. Again, it's important so that you can go back and kind of just review the behavior, see what the ABCs were, see what the function of the behavior was, what antecedent strategies you used or didn't use, and same thing, what consequence strategies you did or didn't use, and what you could maybe change to try and minimize that behavior in the future. So I think we have like a minute or two for questions. I'm happy to stay on longer if anyone has more detailed questions, but anyone have anything for me? Okay. Well, again, I know we're running a little bit late, so if you do have any follow-up questions, I'm more than happy to stay on. And if you want to email me, I put my email address on here. I also put Apara's information on here, so you're more than welcome to send me any emails, questions that you have. I would be happy to help. And I just wanted to thank you all again for what you're doing. I know sometimes it can be a stressful job, but you guys are making such a difference in the lives of the children you work with and their families. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Amberly, for spending time with us today and teaching us all of these amazing things. I learned so much. I'm so excited to use strategies that you gave us with our students.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Can we ask a question?
Of course, yes, please.
I think you muted yourself again. Zara, you muted yourself.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
There.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Okay, so we have one of our student. We used to take him for a walk. Okay. But whenever we take him, he refused to come back. So in this case, what we can do?
Yes, so if he's not wanting to come back into the classroom, I don't know if you guys have tried yet using a timer. So they make on Amazon digital timers, usually it's like a kitchen timer. But maybe setting him up with, hey, we're gonna go for a walk for 2 minutes. When the timer goes off, we have to go back into the classroom. And then reinforce him coming back into the classroom with, oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming back. I'm gonna give you tickles or bubbles or a sticker because you came back. So always reinforce that behavior of coming back. But yeah, using maybe a visual schedule and a timer and just letting them know we're only going for a walk for 2 minutes and then we're coming back to the classroom.
Thank you.
Of course, I hope that helps.
Yeah, so and a comment on that. So we also had something similar child, and so we used the timer, and so we could set it to like we're gonna take a walk for 5 minutes, and once the timer is over, we'll go back and do some work for like a minute, and then slowly we increase the amount of time that he spends inside, and kind of like reduce the duration of the breaks. So you could just do I work with.
Yes, you broke up a little there at the end, but that is perfect. That's a wonderful example. Using the timer and then just slowly increasing the duration that, you work for 30 seconds and then we take a 5-minute walk, and maybe the next day, okay, we got to work for a minute and then we'll take a 4-minute walk, and just slowly increase that duration that they're in the classroom. But that's perfect. That's a great example. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a follow-up for Zara's question. So
Sure.
we have a student and we do timer with her when she goes out, but it doesn't really work. And we've tried like positive reinforcement by, if you come inside, we'll get something from the treasure box, and that doesn't really work either. And then she'll resort to like physical violence, and she'll start hitting her intern. So how can we help with that?
Yes, so that's difficult. And there may be times where it is so reinforced being outside that a lot of times you just are going to have to, unfortunately, say, okay, I'm so sorry, you know, we're going to have to stay in the classroom today, and we maybe can earn a walk at the very end of the day. And that way it's a transition of, okay, we go from a walk and then we go straight home. But if they're engaging in behaviors that are, you know, harmful to themselves or to others, the best thing you can do is an antecedent modification of, if you know it happens every time you go for a walk, unfortunately, we're not going to go for a walk, and we just have to stay in the classroom. And maybe instead on break time, you know, we run around the classroom or go for a walk within the classroom, but just not even allowing the opportunity to engage in those behaviors by going on a walk.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Anyone else? Well, again, if you think of any follow-up questions, I'm always happy to help. You know, you can send me an email with kind of what you're seeing with your student, and I'm more than happy to kind of give you my thoughts and input. I know you also have a lot of BCBAs that kind of volunteer. I think one of our current BCBAs actually volunteers with you all, Sabrina. But BCBAs are a great resource to go to and ask for help or for advice.
Thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for having me. I enjoyed being here.
Thank you. Really enjoyed having you. It really
Thank you
was an
so
amazing
much.
talk.
Thank you
This was
guys.
very informative.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Hi, friend. Hi. That's okay. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. You too. I think, yeah, most of the centers are just, they're like finishing up for today.
Not a problem. Thank you again. Have a good one.